Welcome to the Agency Founder Podcast. Are you ready to grow your marketing agency? We pull back the curtain to show you how real marketing agency founders struggled, built, and scaled their agencies. Practical advice, lessons learned, wins, and losses. We hold nothing back. Now your host, Jeremy Sonny.
Welcome to the Agency Founder Podcast by Moonshine Marketing. Every single week, we interview successful founders of marketing agencies at different points in their journey to pass on their victories, defeats, challenges, and lessons learned to help you take your agency to new heights. This week, we're speaking with Kevin Urrutia, founder of Voy Media, an agency that focuses on performance marketing. Kevin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jeremy, for having me. It's a really pleasure to be here with you today.
So, Kevin, really excited to have you on here today. Could you do a little bit of introduction to kind of our audience and, how you kind of got into the marketing game?
So my background is actually in computer science. So I went to school in upstate New York, Binghamton, and I started computer science because growing up, I was really big into computers, programming, games, and that's kind of how I got started into that. And then kind of like always in college, I've always wanted to do something related to startups, and that is really how I got into just working on my own things. Me and my partner for the agency, Wilson, I met him in college. He's about 3 years younger than me, but we were always working on new apps, new websites, and we even started our first agency there. But that was not like something like Voy Media. That was called One Tiny Bit, and that was our programming development agency. And it's funny because at that time we didn't realize we were doing marketing, but I wrote a program that would scrape Craigslist and then it would email people looking for like web development jobs or like pro projects.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So like at that moment, I didn't realize it was like marketing. It was just like, hey, we have this thing. We're in college. We need to find leads. And like, I was like, but I just don't want to email them all at once, right? Manually.
No, that's incredible. I really love that. Usually you actually see like people go I see a lot of people go the opposite, right? They'll get into like marketing and they'll do like ad ops or something like that. And then suddenly they're trying to like learn programming.
It's interesting because like for us, like when I was doing, like I told you, I was really interested in like web development, programming. And eventually I graduated college and I moved out to California and I was working at mint.com, like that personal finance website as like a front end developer. And so I was there for a year, but like the reason why I went out there is because I wanted to do startups and entrepreneurship. That was like the thing that always drove me, and kind of me at that same time, Wilson came to California too, and he was working at Google, and then he went to Salesforce, and I went to another startup. But nights and weekends, we were working on our own projects. Like we made this thing. It's so funny. Like you probably know, like what are those like meal kit plans for like food?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like a Blue Apron or something.
Blue Apron. Yeah. So we thought about that, and then like a long time ago, obviously people were like, oh my God, that was my idea. But we actually thought about that a long time ago. It was called Recipe Tonight. I think the website's like not up already, but like it was literally like the same exact idea. But anyways, we thought about all these random projects and ideas, and we were developing apps. But one thing that we kind of never realized, or like for us, because we were sort of software background, we always heard in like TechCrunch, like, hey, if you build a cool product, people will just come to you, right?
The what is it, Field of Dreams, right? Like if you build it, they will come. Yeah.
So for me, for the longest time, that's really how I thought it was, because that's sort of like that's everything I kept reading, right? Hey, if you have a really cool software product, people will find you because the best stuff bubbles to the top, right? That's what people say and sometimes still believe now, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really useful founder myth that like Silicon Valley tells itself, like because it's like a sexy story, right? Like, oh, we built this amazing thing and it was such a market need that everybody just came in droves and started handing over piles of cash to us, right? But like the reality is very different oftentimes. Like I actually come from like kind of the tech startup world myself, right? Like I've worked at fintech companies and things like that, so I totally get it. So you're out in the valley, you're with your partner, you guys are jamming on, like different ideas and just building stuff that isn't getting traction, basically, right? Like they might be cool products, but they're not necessarily going the direction that you want.
No, exactly it. And then really, I kind of got started into doing like SEO in the beginning, because that was like, I was like, hey, I have no money. I don't really know what to do. But like I kept seeing people, it's like, obviously that it's the same sort of agenda you hear now. Like, oh, SEO is free traffic. But you don't realize that people are paying for SEO in like different ways, like in links, guest posting, your time, right? But that's kind of how I got started into more marketing. And the reason why we started that was because I left Silicon Valley, I came back to New York, And then I started doing another business here. And here I really focused on home cleaning. So I started doing SEO, local SEO for my own home cleaning company. And that's really kind of how I got into like more marketing because like I had to actually grow my own business. That was about 5 years ago I started that. But then I was running that for about 2.5 years. I was like, hey, this is a great position. I want to do something else. And then Wilson at that time was doing, I mean, you probably know like Amazon FBA was like a huge craze 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Oh yeah. Well, it still is for a lot of people, but yeah, I think it's starting to fade a little bit. But yeah, Amazon FBA, there's a lot of people that built like some pretty successful like companies on that, but like what you don't hear is the 99% of people that like tried to launch something and like it went nowhere.
Yeah, no, exactly. So basically at that time we started a company called Montum. It was like an outdoor gear company. We're still running right now. So usually how I'm kind of like thinking about businesses right now is I start the companies and then I hire people to sort of help me run them. So for Montum, it has like 3 employees that work for that company. So that was my first sort of launch into like DTC, it's like direct to consumer brand. And with Montum, we basically built everything out. Like obviously we did WooCommerce, we're doing the whole sort of Amazon as well, and then also advertising on Facebook. And then that's kind of how I got into more online advertising and learning about the sort of like online marketing space, not just SEO. But then Montum really taught me everything. Like for Montum, we do cold calling, we go to industry events, we do SEO. Like at this time, like if you search like trekking poles, we're like 2 or 3 right underneath REI. And then we also do like, YouTube reviews, blog reviews. So basically kind of like obviously, like you work with DTC founders, it's about building the whole business, not just sort of one channel.
Right, yeah. And that sort of like experience of like being in-house building up the entire thing is like pretty invaluable, to be honest. I haven't like worked inside of like a DTC brand, but like, in the past I've been like, a marketing director for like a startup, right? And so it's like you sit there and like having to consider every single angle, right, is really a different experience. And also like it's really good for agency founders, I think, to like have done that at some point, because there's so many, like when you get into that mindset and you understand the competing concerns and things like that, it makes it a little bit easier to like jive with a potential customer or a potential client, right? And like understand what their needs are and stuff like that. Not just, why won't you buy Facebook ads? Facebook ads are great, but like, really kind of getting like the competing concerns inside of an organization and how to like manage stakeholders and things like that.
And that's really why we started like our agency. It's like obviously you have Montum, one of the companies we have there, but then we started another company called Chester. Again, same concept. Like the main, like basically any business is like really run by me. It's like we basically make the business and then we hire people to help run it. Kind of like I'm not sure people call it like nowadays like incubators or accelerators, right? Where you hire people to like make ideas and then you sort of bring in a team to sort of help execute. So then we also have this other company called Chester, which is a luggage company. So we basically design luggages, beautiful luggages, and then we sell them on Amazon and also on our website. So for us, it's all about like D2C brands and sort of scaling them up, kind of what you said before. Like, but for that, when we do a lot of Facebook, Amazon, influencer marketing, YouTube blogging, because with any brand that you're doing, you learn so much, right? For the Chester, we realized that the influencer marketing space worked really well for that brand. And the reason why is because it's a travel product. And if you send it to an influencer and they love it, they're going to use it again because they're always traveling. Whereas for like Montum, for example, we would send it to influencers, but they would use it once, but never again. So that kind of like that marketing cost is kind of like just like a sunk cost. Whereas for Chester, it's like they're using it again. So they're constantly posting it again.
No, I love that. That's really interesting. So like, clearly you're incredibly successful, much smarter than I am, and much better at like, kind of building those brands out and like understanding not just the products and stuff. So my hat's off to you. I'm already learning a ton from you right now. I guess like the question that I have then, right, is like, all right, so you're jamming on, you have this awesome background in software, you're able to build all this stuff. Like clearly you're an incredibly talented entrepreneur because you understand how to like outsource processes right away and like hire in teams and stuff so that you can kind of move on to the next project, the next, kind of revenue opportunity, right? But you're doing like client services, right? So like why, like if as you're able to like build and scale these brands, a lot of startup studios, right? Or like, kind of funds or whatever, they focus like internally on their own projects, but you're focusing externally too, like helping like clients grow their brands in addition to growing your own. Can you talk to me about like kind of the decision to like do both of those things?
Yeah, really the decision was that for me, like you probably tell, like I want to be learning a lot. And I think working with other founders that also have really great D2C brands is super helpful for me to learn kind of how they think and sort of how they work. And really for me, selfishly was to meet other founders because I want to be like, hey, I want to see if I can invest in this company or brand later on, right? Because I want to be like, and like we've learned so much, like me and my Wilson were like, this is a great way to meet founders. We can help them because we actually have the real world experience of like making our own D2C brands and scaling those up. That way, when we work with them, saying, "Hey, look, this is why we think you should work with us," is because like we don't just say we can do it; we've actually done it, and here's the proof, right? So, and like I said, it's also really about just connecting with these people. Like they need help, and sort of we think that we can help them. And also, I think it's just a great sort of model to sort of just meet new people that are like really want to scale their businesses.
No, I love that. I mean, I think that I can definitely tell that you're kind of like one of those lifelong learner, sort of folks that like really kind of are interested in like kind of learning about new spaces and finding the opportunities and stuff. I think like a lot of the sort of top tier entrepreneurs have that sort of attitude, which is really great. So you're doing the Amazon FBA stuff. You're launching your own brands. Tell me about, how did the like external agency part get started, and how did you obviously you have impressive case studies and stuff like that, but how did you actually go out and find the right clients for you, or did you find the right ones right away and like end up niching later on? Talk to me about that process, the early days.
The early days of the agency was really kind of people just asking us for help because they would see our stuff and people like, hey, like I also have like a D2C brand or my friend has a D2C brand and they're looking to launch. Can you guys help them out? And that's kind of how me and Wilson sort of started, but just telling people, hey, like, and the reason why it's like Wilson has a network too, because Wilson started his own outdoor gear company as well. So I started one and he started one. So I started one because he started one. I was like, if you could do it, I could do it too.
I like that. Like a little bit of competition among co-founders. That's awesome.
But like, the thing is, like, he's also like one of my best friends. So I was like, and then he helped me out, right? So I'm like, hey, we're friends. Let's help each other out, right? And then we started the agency together. But that's kind of how it came up because people were asking him for help. And kind of what you're saying before is working with these founders. We've seen niches and like segments of like stuff that we would never think would work really well. And then now we're seeing them. We're just like, wow, I can't believe they're spending like $500,000 on Facebook ads with like one person running it at such a high efficiency. And we're really just like so surprised sometimes.
Right. No, that's really interesting. I think that, yeah, like the sub niches inside of the niches are like, it's wild to me how much money flies around in some of those spaces, right? Because like it does solve a very, very specific problem for somebody. And it doesn't have to like necessarily even solve it for that many people. You know what I mean? When you think about like the scale of, almost 8 billion people in the world, right? Like you only have to appeal to some like infinitesimal percentage of them.
Which is so true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I believe that too. But yeah, going back to like the early days, I mean, obviously back then, like over 3 years ago, was so different. Like the budgets we were taking, the clients we were taking, it was just sort of really finding out. Like for us, like we always tell brands, like we don't have too much agency experience, but we have the real D2C experience. So that's why learning how to run an agency or build an agency was something that we just read books about and sort of talk to people about. Like our friends were doing agencies, so I would text them sometimes, like, "Hey, how do you guys do your pricing?" Like pricing of an agency was like really hard because we didn't know how people were charging. So we had to call up places and be like, hey, how much are you charging? Like, I was like, hey, this is for like Montum. How much are you charging?
No, that's really interesting. I noticed that like one of the biggest kind of typically it falls into a few buckets, but like people have very strong opinions about pricing agency services. Did you run through a couple of models, right? Because I kind of have a little shiny object syndrome. So I kind of ran around and like, tried literally every one of them at one point or another, which was a nightmare for my poor bookkeeper. Like when I had like, at one point, like 2 clients on one pricing model and 2 clients on another. And then like, and like, so nowadays, like, I landed on just doing percentage of ad spend, right? And that works well for me. But did you like work through that process? Like, or did you just get it out of the gate? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So it was funny because out of the gate, we knew we wanted to do percentage of ad spend with like a minimum. Our minimum initially when we first started out was $1,000 a month. And then we were charging percentage of ad spend. Yeah. Now we just updated our pricing. Like at this time, it's about between 3,000 to like $4,000 minimum because now we are just bigger. We offer more services, but we still kind of do percentage of ad spend because that still works for us. And I mean, you probably hear sometimes like clients push back on it, but we're saying like, hey, like we're only going to scale and spend your money when it makes sense. Like, I mean, you probably hear this question all the time. They're like, or are you just gonna spend my money? I'm like, no, like doesn't make sense to just spend your money. Like we're here to build a long-term relationship, not like a 1 month and we're out type of thing.
Yeah, so I mean that's like the big thing that I always say, right? Is my contracts are month to month, so they can cancel at any time. I go in worst case scenario, you're out 1 month, and you always control the media spend, right? So if you don't think we're doing a good job, just fire us, right? But like if we're scaling, it's because we're making money together profitably, and we want to continue to make more like absolute dollars together. So yeah, definitely something I hear all the time. And it's interesting. So it seems like you're still doing that, but with like higher minimums now. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And for us, we actually were doing month to month too, kind of what you were doing before. But we switched to really between like a 3 to 6 month minimum now. So anywhere between their clients will look to negotiate. And like one of the biggest lessons learned is really as an agency, like you want to have some sort of like predictability in the revenue that you're going to have for the next few months. So that really helps out. And for us too, when working with the brands, it's sort of we're just pre-framing the question like, I want to promise you the best results the first month, but I've done this before. Like you were going to need at least a good 3 months to sort of figure out what creatives are working, what copies are working, and going from there. That way, as a brand, I tell them like we're going to figure it out together.
That's funny. Actually, I say something like very similar too. I say, look, this is month to month. Give me 30 days to hit break even, and then we'll hit profitability by 90 days. Like a decent like profit multiple, right? And then we can start scaling after that is the typical sort of timeline. But I'm kind of weird though, because honestly, like at this point, I'm doing like white label services for like creative agencies and stuff like that. They resell. So it's like, folks that are like really talented graphic designers or copywriters or video editors resell our services. So like through a white label way. So we're just pure media buying at this point mostly. So I'm like almost like a meta agency. So I'm not the best person to compare to. But yeah, that's really interesting. I love hearing that. One thing that you hit on earlier that I wanted to kind of touch on was you talked about how, you have these brands and you're able to like effectively outsource and hire folks to like run them, and then you can kind of move on to focus on whatever's next or like the next client or what have you. Talk to me about how do you go about finding the right talent in order to be able to find the right people to run those brands in the way that you want, keeping like the quality of work really high and everything while being able to move quickly to fill kind of roles.
Hiring for the Voy Media agency is a very different hiring process than like hiring for like my brand. So for Voy Media, we have like maybe like a 5 interview process for one person, and we learned this all from just like a hiring book. I need to think about the name of it, but this is for Voy Media. It's because we're looking for basic specific people to do specific things like media buying, creative design, graphic design, video design. Whereas for like running a startup or like entrepreneurship, you're kind of looking for guys like us that are like want to do something that kind of have like a chip on their shoulder. So that you're right. So like you're looking for guys who want to prove something, right?
You're right. Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. You want like the person that's like a little scrappy and can like do whatever it is you need them to do, right? Like I get that, right? Because like when I'm looking to bring somebody onto my team, I'm looking for somebody that's like what I call like a turtle, right? Like there's somebody that wants to like their goal in life is 10% improvement in every ad account that they're in month over month. You know what I'm saying? Like they're slowly going to just keep cranking up the profitability, cranking up the scale, right? They're going to look at the details really, really closely. They're like heads down workers typically, where like a startup, I want like a hare, you know what I mean? I want somebody that's willing to jump around and try like weird stuff and like jump in. And then when they find something, kind of like, crank that up to like 11, right? Like, in order to like kind of capitalize on some like weird growth hack or something like that. It is a different role. I would agree. How do you go about finding those folks? Like a lot of like network referrals or
For like the guys right now, it's just like network referrals of people and sort of like talking to people and say like, hey, like my friend's doing this, and I'm like, oh, he's kind of interesting, like, or like, hey, my friend just came out of this role and he's not too happy, and then I asked them a little bit about their background, what they've done before. Really, what I'm looking for is people that really show initiative in stuff that isn't like given by a job, right? It's very easy to say like, hey, at this role I was doing this, but then I asked like, what have you done outside of work that is kind of related to that, and it shows that you're willing to solve something that no one's paying you for.
No, I love that. Yeah, the ability to take initiative on your own and actually like kind of dive in and solve other problems, right? Those creative problem solving is so key. So, like I'm a little bit embarrassed. You're such like a I'm talking to a way more successful entrepreneur than myself, clearly, like able to scale these brands and start this agency and all that. So I'm like, I'm really, really
We're
honored.
all learning. We're all learning. I tell people like I'm just learning too. Trust me. Yeah.
For sure. Well, you're learning a little faster than me. So, that said, what have kind of like the biggest like it seems like you've been incredibly successful, but what have like the biggest challenges been, right? Like, have you hit walls, and like specifically, and like how did you kind of overcome those, in the process of building your agency?
For the agency, like some of the biggest challenges, I mean, you probably heard this before, it's people, like hiring enough people, right? It's hiring the right people. But even then, I think one of the biggest challenges is still like, I tell people in like the first 3 months, you kind of know when someone's going to work out or not work out, sometimes even quicker. And I think us as humans, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt as like they're going to get better, they're going to learn. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And it's the truth. And it's just like, oh, like, and then you're just thinking about it, like, come on, please, like, you're hoping to yourself, like, please prove me wrong, right? I just like sometimes I'm just like, please prove me wrong, please, because I don't want to like let people go because it sucks. It really sucks. And so that's one of the biggest challenges is like people, right? Another big challenge, at least for the agency wise, is how do you hire another, like, for example, media buyer? Like, because then if you hire a media buyer, you have to think, okay, I need to bring in X amount of clients now to sort of keep them busy. That way they're not just like not doing anything.
That can be tough, like, kind of balancing the like, oh, we need X client, because like with agencies, with any professional services, right? Like you have to have the work on the table before you can confidently go hire somebody, or you have to have a big pot of cash. And so that always makes it really difficult. So how do you approach that?
Basically, we like even right now we're looking to hire a media buyer because like we just onboarded a bunch of new clients. So yeah, I mean we're basically just working with the clients to like say, hey, we're gonna set you up, but in like a month or two, you're gonna have like a new media buyer. Because basically we just like way too many for some, and we're sort of trying to like at least balance it out for people where we want to still provide a great experience and a great service and not overwhelm our existing media buyers. But like that's sort of a challenge that you like. I would say like that's why you're always hiring, or like for us, we're always interviewing people and sort of have people in the pipeline that whenever they're ready, we're like, hey, look, like you're done with step 3. Let's now move you to step 4 because we're ready to hire you. And so at least we sort of get like the pre-interviews done.
Yeah, so definitely kind of having like a full talent pipeline at all times it helps you with that sort of flexibility, would you say?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. No, I love that. I really love what you're hearing. I asked about challenges. What have kind of the biggest like aha moments and like victories been? And like if you could tell yourself, hey, I wish I would have done this like 6 months or a year ago, do you have any of those sort of moments or like kind of lessons to share with the folks that are listening, and are thinking like, okay, I've got something here. I'm starting to like get some clients and stuff. Like what would you have changed to like avoid some pain, avoid some heartache, and kind of get to where you want faster?
I would say like really establishing like a process on how you do things. So for example, with agencies, how do you onboard clients? How do you have a sales process? How do you offload from your sales guy to your media buyers? And then sort of like what is that sort of process once you're working with them? Like how is the creative testing going to be? How is the media buying going to be? How do you present things to them? Having just sort of that process helps you because then everybody in your team knows exactly what to say or do in a way that is a great experience for every client that you have on board. So one thing that we try to hear is like every time you work with a bunch of us, it's going to be the same experience no matter who you're working with, like the same templates, the same layouts, the same way we present, like everything is templatized. That way there's no like, how come when Kevin emailed me, it looked better than when, John Schmo emailed me? Like, how come his emails are different formatted, right? So we tell people like, hey, like you're going to have to, your email is going to be like this. You're going to have a photo here. You're going to turn on your webcam whenever you talk to a client. You're going to have a signature like this because we want that same experience for everybody.
No, I love that actually. And it's like you're saying all the things that are like the common threads of all the really successful, much more successful than me folks that have been on my podcast that I've been lucky enough to have, kind of repeat over and over, which is it's great people and it's great process. And you just go from there. And so that seems to be kind of the underpinning of everything. So, Kevin, I truly appreciate your time today. I've learned an incredible amount, and like, honestly, I'm in awe of a lot of the things that you've been able to accomplish. I always give the folks that are on my show, like 1 or 2 minutes to quick pitch whatever they want at the end of the episode. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take that time now.
I mean, like for me, if you're interested in learning more about me, you can just follow me on Twitter. That's my username is Danest, Danest, or just email me, Kevin at Voy Media. Or like I said, check out our website, voymedia.com. And if possible, we have a podcast too called Digital Marketing Fastlane where we just talk about marketing stuff. So you can check it out if you're interested.
And it's a much better podcast than mine. I was really impressed. I was super nervous, like coming into this. I was like, oh no, he's a way better host than I am. What am I gonna do?
Yeah, you can check it out. You know, it's quick episodes. You know, between 5 to 10 minutes, just some sort of actionable insights on e-commerce or just marketing in general.
That's wonderful. Well, Kevin, thank you so much again for sharing your time with us. For those of you listening, take these lessons to heart, use them to grow your own agency, especially around process and people and kind of being lifelong learner like Kevin is, and really kind of taking that next step. So everybody listening, happy marketing.